Get way excited. I'm gonna jump in this chair. Hopefully I'm still in frame, focused, or whatever. For some reason, before I start a podcast, I get a little bit jittery, really nervous. So that's just, I guess I'm just gonna get used to this. That, or it's just like the thought of performing, because I have fans now. I released my podcast last night, and it's a mix of emotions doing that. By the way, you're probably going to, whenever I am talking alone, just go ahead and tune this up to like 1.2 or 1.5x on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you guys are listening. Also, like and subscribe. I guess that's a thing. You got to do that. So if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please rate, review. I don't know how. Figure it out. I've never rated a podcast in my life. Spotify's easy. There's like 5 stars. Click on those. Hit the 5-star rating. Even if you don't think it's that good, just do it. It'll get better, I promise. And I'm going to laugh at some of my jokes today. I released that podcast to the world, which is about 1,500 people on my Facebook. That's my world right now. And the support's been pretty phenomenal. I'm absolutely blown away by the support from everybody. I got like 80 new listens, which isn't that much, but I've gained like 10 or 15 new audience, I guess, on the analytics of my Anchor. That's what I'm using to post this podcast and everything. So guys, I just got to say thank you so much. It was nerve-wracking. First and foremost, what a lot of people need to realize is I'm in progress. I'm a work in progress. Everyone in this world is a work in progress. The original podcasts I put out, I wanted them to be a little bit raw. I wanted them to be a little unedited to show truly where I started out. So if you only listen to podcast 1 and then you're like, yep, this one's not for me, please give it another try. I'll repost this today, or I'll post this today on Christmas Eve and just kind of my sign off before tomorrow. But it's in progress, and I think that's how some of the best things are is when you disassociate yourself from your original mistakes and everything and then move yourself forward. And I already found a couple mistakes the other day on episode 3. I was listening to that and I realized that I actually put out to the world how much my savings were until I updated that podcast. So I probably shouldn't be sharing a whole lot of too much financial information. I'm always willing to share you guys my operating cash and everything, but there are some things I need to be able to keep a little bit on the DL, especially if as many people as I'm finding out are going to be listening to this. But I want to be as transparent as possible, and I always will be. But the comments that I got after I posted that thing was phenomenal. I gotta share this one that I absolutely was just like, what? In podcast 2, I think I talked a little bit about when I was younger, I was the smartest kid in the class, and I thought I was the smartest kid in the class. I felt like I had to be. Excuse me. See, my mind is terrible, and I'm gonna botch even my own podcasts. But just know that I'm trying to do it as intently as I'm trying to recreate my thoughts and feelings as honestly as possible. And I got this from a special friend of mine. I guess she's alone this Christmas, but hopefully she's okay with sharing this. Be careful about what you send me, because I will totally share it in the podcast and talk about it. But I just got this, and it says, "It is so dang cool to listen to you. I am alone this Christmas. It's like hanging out with you, and I have so many similar thoughts and feelings. It's so cool to hear you talk about yourself in retrospection, because you always were the smartest kid in the room." That made me tear up a little bit. "And acted the most mature," and the keyword acted. "I can't tell you how awesome this is to listen to. I get so emotionally wrapped up in things that are trivial, and I go through the manic depressive states as well. I'm really happy that you're doing this." So getting that kind of confirmation that I'm kind of on the right path here is phenomenal. It's absolutely crazy to see how many people that have always knew that I'd be good at this, quotation marks, so, or in quotes, So I don't know. Some of that's like a slap in the face because it's like, you're always so good at bullshitting, and I'll have to bleep that out now. But yeah, yeah. So phenomenal. Thank you guys so much for the support. That's great. And I'm an open book. The whole goal of this is, yeah, in the very beginning I said it's getting paid to speak, and eventually that'd be nice. But I really am doing this so that I can just be a little bit more honest with people. I got a lot of social anxiety from just how I feel. I think it's mostly imposter syndrome in every sense of the word. But I just have a lot of anxiety about how I'm perceived, and maybe the facades I've put out there, and maybe the scariest thing is to be unapproachable. Not in a way that like I'd snap back, but I'm worried sometimes that I come off as I'm too good for some people, or I don't care about people because I'm terrible about staying in communication with some folks and not following up, and because I truly just don't know what to do in some situations. So that's just me being honest. I'm speaking in vague terms because I just felt like I've never really been very good at staying in touch in intimate relationships. And I thought maybe if I got a podcast out there, one aspect of it is or just doing these recordings is just letting people know, like, you know, we're all dealing with things, and we're all trying to figure out how to manage our lives and balance our lives and stay in touch with people and maintain relationships and maintain partnerships and maintain all these different ships. And it takes a lot of tolls. Now, this podcast is also going to be a little bit, maybe not hard for people to hear, but it is sadly going to be, or not, maybe not sadly, but it's definitely more of a mindset thing. I'm going to talk a lot about emotions and working through those, because that's truly where I feel like I'm struggling, and that's where it sounds like a lot of other folks are struggling. But different demographics are going to deal with it in different ways. I come from a pretty hardy people, I guess, and emotions weren't really talked a whole lot about. You just kind of push through it, work through it, literally worked through it. And, you know, the most emotionally supportive thing that you would typically get is if you got up early and went to coffee with somebody at a cafe somewhere, you know, and you talked about the weather, you know, because it's like, I don't know, that was a lot of the world that I grew up in. So having a place to put this out there where I can be intimate in my thoughts with a lot of different people one-on-one, because a lot of people don't listen to podcasts like in parties or groups. So to the one person that's listening to this in multiple different, you know, places, and it's like I'm having a conversation with that person, letting some things out, letting them realize, you know, being a little bit vulnerable in that, letting other people know that as they're working through their stuff, they're not the only ones. Because I think that's the biggest thing here. So I got a good buddy of mine shot back a little bit of feedback last night, and I love feedback on this. No matter what, I love feedback. And I mean, don't be too mean. I'm pretty sensitive. Ask my wife. So, but I will take some feedback when I can get it. And he said, "Who's Drew April? You know, that's fantastic, but who is Drew Gerber?" And in the past episodes, I was just kind of throwing out snippets and literally recording more for therapy. I literally off the cuff posted about this podcast. I was just like, you know what better time than now? Posted it. I'd been shooting some content with some buddies of mine. They've been getting photos of me, so I just used that and got it out there. My wife took the beautiful podcast photo where I'm at the table. But I just randomly did it off the cuff, and the first couple were literally just me just starting. It was just starting. Hit the record button, work through it. Just start babbling on. Figure out, you know, what are you feeling that day? be very intent about it, and post it. That is what it was. And now I'm going to be catering a little bit more to the audience and trying to give more structure, give more information, and just be a better human being and friend. But if you didn't spend the last 25 years with me, a lot of that stuff is going to sound really vague, not make a whole lot of sense. And you're also going to be probably asking yourself, why in the world would he share this? What is he going through that he has to do this? And where is he at in a mindset? So I'll kind of start from the beginning. Again, speed this up a little bit. If you want to, you can skip over whatever you want. But I feel like this is the best way for me to have a conversation with the audience and whoever is listening out there, is if you kind of have an idea of where I'm coming from. Now, my perspective is going to be different from other people's perspectives. I'll try to be as honest as possible. And if anything, I will take all of the blame if I botch a couple memories or situations that I was in, because I truly just want to be as transparent as possible. And because I'm so introspective, for the most part, I think I know most of my sins, most of my transgressions against other people, but I might miss a couple. So if I miss a couple and I'm not completely honest, send me that feedback. Please don't publicly post it. I will try to make it right in the next podcast. So, and, but also it's, I don't want to try to make it all about me, but this is the best way for me to just get in touch with you guys and have this conversation. You know, if we're going to have this ongoing conversation, you might as well know who your host is. So I was born in Bellingham, Washington. Oh, listen up, because if you ever want to hack me, you're probably going to find all the secret answers to to my secret questions on every platform that I'm invested in. So I was born in Bellingham, Washington, back in '96, and I was born to two pretty great parents who decided to eventually just only have two kids. I think they wanted more, but they just had me and Quinn. And my dad was at the time he was logging and flying freight, and I mostly know my dad as a pilot. For the most of my life, he was a pilot. He did a little bit of outfitting when I was young, and then later on in life, we would go hunting and stuff together. So that kind of all plays into it. But I think a lot of it has to do with my folks and where they came from, and that's kind of what shaped my personality as a human being. So, and that's typically how it is for most everybody. So my mom decided to be a stay-at-home mom, but she was working part-time, and I think she was doing some kind of not secretary work, but record keeping or something like that at a hospital. And she has a whole history in horses, animal husbandry, working on farms. I think she had a tack store for a little while, meaning horse equipment. For those of you who aren't very familiar with horse stuff, she worked at a satellite bedding station, off-site racetrack bedding station, and got inducted to be a chef there and everything. And she's got a pretty interesting life. She worked on logging crews. She was definitely one of the guys. Is at least that's the way it's been portrayed to me. So she would typically help out and do more things around the crew and doing that than anything else. And very tough lady. My mom's about 5 years younger than my dad, and my dad had a whole bunch of lives as well. And he was from Deming, I believe. I think he was born in the same hospital I was, but I can't remember. But anyways, he grew up in a family of 5 kids and had 3 brothers himself and then a little sister. And my grandparents, Rose and Everett Gerber, they were, pretty salt of the earth people. Whenever I say that, that's a compliment. I'm not calling people salty like the new generation may think, but salt of the earth is a really down to earth person and just good, hardworking folk, I guess. And yeah, so big family. They ag-related logging family. It was my dad's family, and it was my grandparents were also pilots. My grandmother was an English teacher. My grandfather was a equipment operator and everything. He served in Korea and did some other things like that, but mostly equipment operator and logging and those kinds of things. And so we come from a pretty blue collar family, and my dad lived most of his life like that. He started hauling hay when he was in high school, and that's where I learned how to drive truck and everything, was from him knowing how to run a lot of that machinery. He had a logging company at one point. He skied with Olympic athletes. I guess he played baseball at a semi-professional level, had an opportunity to do some stuff like that. I'll have to bring some people on to talk about his legacy because he is no longer with us. But he was an amazing man, and I couldn't thank him for anything more than that. He's just an amazing father and fantastic. And that's a huge part of my story, because his heart and his soul and him, the way he looked at life and dealt with life was a huge part of where I learned how to be who I am. So, anyways, fast forward, we moved over here to Montana. Dad decided one day that he was no longer going to be falling timber for a living. And he had racked up enough hours to get a commercial flying job over in Billings. He also had a part-time outfitting company. He was a partnership up in western Montana, Thompson Falls area. And I think he quit that right before we moved to Billings as well, or maybe a year after that. He'd still go and outfit when we needed money, and he'd go and log when we needed money. Because believe it or not, when you're a professional pilot in Billings, Montana in the early 2000s, you're making maybe $30,000 a year. It was nothing. I think we were still on food stamps, living in an apartment there for a while. Things were pretty slim growing up. We had one vehicle for quite a while. And anyways, I was going to school, and I was a talker. I loved to, if you would have heard me talk back then, you would have thought I ran an outfitting company and a logging crew and all of these different things. And maybe you talk to me today and you still think the same thing, but I was pretty much living through my dad and all of his buddies and his stories and everything, more so than mine. So I was living through him. And so I talked a pretty big game. And growing up, I was always like that, super interested in reading and books. My mom instilled a hunger to read. I read a ton. I read Aragon, Harry Potter. I read Hatchet series. I read a ton of just outdoorsy kind of books, and on the plains kinds of books, and the classics. Oh man, Monte Cristo, The Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite books. And I just dove into that, and that really drove my imagination. I had ideas all over the place, and I started seeing, movies and just so much was there. I'd get so involved with a movie like Treasure Planet. I would get so involved with it, and I'd get so excited about it, about that surfboard that guy had. He was building it. I would tell my dad, draw it all up. Dad, I need you to bring home a couple jet engines. I need you to get this for me. I'm going to build a pod racer. I'm going to build this surfboard. I'm going to build all this different stuff. And I literally thought that I was capable of these things. I truly believed it. When my parents told me that I couldn't do it, or I wasn't going to be able to do it, or like wouldn't take me seriously, I would get upset. I'd pack my bags and I'd get out at 6 years old. I'd be trying to like exit the apartment. And so you can imagine, I'm a very emotional, very excited kid about a lot of this stuff. And it was a beautiful time. So anyways, I just felt life. I lived life. I just felt so much. I just was so emotionally in tune. And I can't imagine my dad dealing with that. I can't imagine it because, he didn't talk about his feelings a whole lot. Neither of my folks did until later on in life, when you're starting to talk to him about, should I go talk to a therapist or what's going on here? How bad is it? But when people look at kids and go, his therapist can be driving a Lambo one day. Well, I didn't I was too cheap to pay for that, but it's pretty funny stuff in those regards. And it was a pretty good life growing up. But that was the way I was. And so I got accepted into this gifted ed thing, and it started to warp my mind. I think I started thinking I was the smartest kid in the room, which is a dangerous thing to be. But I always realized that I was very introspective, and I was also just thinking all the time. And when you're like that, you can easily go one of two ways. You can become extremely manipulative. You can, start to twist things in your favor when you find out you can lie and things like that. Or exaggerate, and exaggerating isn't lying. Exaggeration is sadly a huge part of my life. It always has been. And you're going to find out that I'm going to try not to, but it still is definitely just like, it's more like a speech impediment. It just slips its way in there. So, yeah. So I had some amazing teachers, and they got me even more excited about reading and different things. And my, gifted ed teacher, I don't know if I'll out her name here. I don't have to. I should probably be more careful about who I'm talking about and everything, and not out so many people unless they want to be outed. But wonderful woman, and let me read even more stuff in there. And I started to lose interest in certain things that I couldn't see an immediate purpose for. I was way more interested in telling stories, way more interested in relating something to somebody else. And looking back now, I was just all about getting other people to believe me and to take me seriously and to look at me as somebody that could actually potentially do something one day than math or anything else. I was way more interested in just trying to relate and be socially accepted than a lot of different things. And then I would have these mixed emotions back and forth where I should be a stoic, completely offset from society, and just hide and not hide, but just like, well, I'm too good for them, or they don't understand, or blah, blah, blah. And I would have these like outbursts, even with friends, and just be like, you don't get it. You don't understand how tough the world is. Because I would see like a little bit of a pessimistic view from my folks. There's a lot of things that were not, I was a realist, maybe not even pessimistic. My dad was an optimist, but I was a realist in a lot of ways. And a realist is just a cover up for somebody that doesn't know how to have hope, and they're always constantly justifying the reasons why things aren't the way that they would like them to be, or that someone else would like them to be. You're always constantly, when someone brings up something and you're like, you don't understand, the world is way worse than what you think, or you're being extremely naive. I was kind of that kid in some ways. And then but at the same time, I would be upset when I had big ideas and people would then try to ground my big ideas. So it was just a terrible feedback loop. And I felt that all the way through high school. Even when I got into high school, I was trying to start companies and businesses and talk my way into things that were probably in the end looked more like scams than actual businesses. But I was just so excited to go try something and do something and be a part of something and break the what I thought was a status quo, typical teenage angst BS. But not really. I mean, a little bit true. Like I just knew that there's other ways than sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day. And by God, I was going to do it, because I just started to lose not respect for my teachers, but I would look at a teacher and I would say, I don't want to live that life. So why am I being taught by that person? And, that was just how I acted. Now there's a lot of wonderful teachers that I've had and I've loved them, but I just started to get really cynical and, darker and darker as I got my way through high school, and, just taking myself probably too seriously in some regards. But you can just I can look at myself and go, wow, I started to kind of fall off in mathematics there in 6th, 7th grade. And then, oh, and by the way, I'm still taking myself too seriously. But this is me analyzing my life when you start to look back. And then I started to see myself fall off in any kind of studies, really, in when I went to a private Catholic school at Central. And I'm just watching myself go through all of that. And in this time, I'm meeting a lot of different people. Lockwood was a wonderful school to go to school at because there was a lot of business families, like families that own businesses, and just solid, good people there. But then I stepped into the Central community, and it was a much more, not a wealthy class, but more upper class type of society. Most families owned businesses there, or they had really good paying corporate jobs. Typically, they were all college educated for the most part, or a lot of them are college educated. And I was a really good talker. I was very good at acting mature. My parents were probably on average 10 to 15 years older than most everyone else's parents. 8 to 10 probably on average, I guess more. So I was like a walking little time capsule. I listened to Marty Robbins. I listened to Glenn Campbell. I listened to Johnny Cash. My mom was a huge bluegrass fan. She took me and my brother to bluegrass festivals quite frequently. And I was raised by my dad, who had never had a college education, but just had stories of all of these different people in his life that had inspired him and taught him how to do these things. And it was all like the extraordinary people. It's the extraordinary people, but they were extraordinary. They were machinists that could build anything they wanted. They were timber fallers that could put a tree wherever they wanted. They were machinery operators. They were processors. They were guys that had the gift of gab and salesmanship. And my uncle Mike, who is really good at, just running his company and everything. And just so many people that had just built things out of nothing, or had become extremely skilled in what they were given in life in their own little areas, that it was like I grew up in a cafe just listening to all of their stories, BS or not. But and that was the people that made it to the dinner table. The stories about, oh, you remember old, something, and the things that he could do. And that's just how I grew up. And so I talked that way. My speech patterns got that way. And then I knew how to speak in a similar way to talking to other people. It was a sincere, honest, salt of the earth kind of language. And that fed my ability to really get anywhere in life, because I could relate. I was a good relator, and I was good at talking about the just the stories and putting them out there in a simple way that many people could understand and relate to. Or that's the way I perceived it. Now, going through high school, I got to try a lot of different stuff. I ran into a good buddy of mine that almost turned into a brother. Almost, but I mean, like, he's like a brother. Caleb, and he took me, man, he was sneaking me out of school. We were working on ranches and stuff like that my senior year, and he was a great friend of mine. And in middle school, I had some wonderful friends too. I met a homeschooler that we all, I love you to death, man. If you listen to this podcast, Rick Whitaker, one of the smartest kids I've ever met, and showing us how to build computers and Bitcoin back in 2010. I won't out us too much here. And then Gabe Matthews was a math whiz, dude. He was a math kid, and he was also in my gifted ed course. And I'm outing all of these people, so someone better listen to this podcast and make sure, if you want to be talked about, tell me now. And all of these guys have kind of been reaching out after I posted this podcast last night. So, but I had a great experience there with a lot of those kids growing up, and then all of a sudden high school came along, and I kind of distanced myself a little bit in some places, because I felt like, well, at that point in time, my home life was, my dad had started going overseas. He didn't work for Big Sky Airlines anymore. He started working for a company called Blackwater, and so he was doing that, and he was in Afghanistan and a lot of places overseas. So he'd be gone for months out of the year. He has a very interesting story. Sometime I'll bring my mom or some of his friends on to talk about it. And at that point, those are super crucial years. I was learning how to hunt. I was starting to get into the extracurriculars like wrestling, swimming, and I was working on, pretty much in the summertime, I'd always go and find somebody to work for. I worked for a compost company for quite a while when I was too young and probably shouldn't be working for somebody. I worked on a couple little dude ranch things. I worked on a horse ranch right next to my house. My mom taught me, we were in 4-H and stuff, so I learned how to ride horses and do all of that and train horses. My mom was big on training horses, and I really enjoyed that. And then I met some other folks, and I just really attached myself to this cowboy lifestyle. If I wasn't going to grow up to be a logger like my dad had always talked about, cowboying seemed like the most responsible. Well, maybe not the most responsible, but probably one of the most, in my mind, one of the best things, one of the most looked up to blue collar job was like being a cowboy. And a machinery operator over here would be a combine operator instead of a tree processor, or skidder, or dozer. So that's kind of the way I gravitated. And I met Caleb, and he took me haying. We went and worked cows. I'd get snuck out of school by him and Cleto, and throw both of you guys under the bus. And man, it was just great cowboy adventures. Did it only a couple times. It's not like crazy, but I had a little tech startup I tried to talk my way through in high school. So the tech startup started first, came home from a job. I had a poor experience, and I was like, I never want another kid to get hired again by somebody that doesn't deserve to train a kid, And I started this tech startup, and the whole idea was I wanted to make a company that would rate the employer, rate the kids, and then based on what the kids want to learn about, it lets them go and try these positions at these companies, see what they like, and if they do like it, they can go ahead and work there, and then potentially set up a program that company would pay for any more training that they have to do if they decide they like it. So like a 30-day tryout program, and then those kids could then move on. So I wanted them to have an alternate path than school. I was at this point starting to really not like school, and even my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I was really just not a huge fan of it. And I started to acquire a lot of skills that school would never grade me on. I could ride, never could rope, but I could train horses. I could do some machinery work. I could work on machinery. I was really good at, I thought I was good at selling things. I did some stuff like that. There was just so much more that I thought school was not grading a human being by. And school was just setting you up for one thing only, and that was college. And college is only setting you up to go out and get a 9-to-5. And I hated that. I hated watching my dad leave. I hated him getting told to go somewhere that he didn't want to go, but the money was good enough. He had to do it anyways. And I hated seeing my time slip away from my family because of this perceived jailhood of a 9-to-5. Now, later on in life, I understand you have to put your time in to get things done, but I'm trying to work you through the process of what I was thinking, and this is how your host became who he is today. So, seeing all of that, I was gonna short step this process. I was gonna figure out how to make this happen faster, because the projects I was doing in school seemed absolutely worthless. And it would have been better for someone to come alongside and say, all right, you want to follow this through? Now, my mom definitely did this. She helped me build an LLC. I found some attorneys. I talked my parents into using my college fund to try to fund some of this. I hired my friends. I tried to start this company, and I had no idea what I was doing. And it eventually went bust. I found a software guy that I don't know if he intentionally screwed me over or not, but he ghosted me. We had a project, and I paid him. Turns out he wasn't paying the team. That's what I was hearing, to build this thing out in software and build out the website and everything. And it just kind of fell apart. So at this point, I don't feel like I've really done anything that I've ever truly succeeded at. I mean, I had a couple things that I was decent at, writing and, whatever, horses and reading and talking and blah, blah, blah. But that killed me. How that whole thing fell apart. And then just figuring out in that, you have to have so much discipline to pursue something like that at that age, where you're now thinking about girls, cars, hanging out with friends on the weekends, a little bit of partying, and figuring out how to make money in faster, maybe illegal ways. So it was a time that I really fell off the wagon there after that company kind of fell apart. And I was competition shooting too. I mean, I had a lot of things that I was trying to do all at once. I never really settled on one thing. I was just trying a lot of stuff. And competition shooting I had been doing since middle school because I had developed arthritis at a young age. When I was about 11, 12 years old, I got diagnosed with arthritis and I couldn't play baseball anymore, which I think killed my dad because he loved baseball. He loved sports. And then one day when I couldn't run up the field, I got picked on a little bit and ended up in a hospital actually in middle school because I got hit from behind and was in a wheelchair for a little while, just kind of hanging out at home. My mom was furious. But that's how it is growing up. Kids pick on kids for no other reason. Maybe those kids are getting thumped on at home. I don't know. But also I was probably running my mouth, which is a classic thing. But after that, I had to do something else. I couldn't really do a whole lot of active stuff for a while. So I went and started competition shooting. A friend of mine got me into it when my dad was overseas, and a couple friends actually, and they'd take me out. And that was something that my grandparents used to do. My dad used to do when he was younger too, was skeet shooting and trap shooting. And so I got into shooting and we got a tour all over the place. My parents put some money into that too and let us figure that out. We never had a lot of money, but we had enough to go and try some of those other sports that I would think are kind of more luxury sports until I found out what volleyball club was and some other stuff that was stupid expensive. If you're swimming year round, that's expensive. But, so I wasn't that well off, but we were good enough to go buy our shells, and we would be able to do side bets and pay for our shooting. And then we started reloading as kids, and it was a pretty crazy thing to do competition shooting when you're 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. That's a pretty lucky thing to have in my background. So I always grew up around guns too. That was a thing too. So anyways, moving through all of that, after the company kind of fell apart, I kind of was like, man, what am I going to do next? My grades had already fallen off at school, and I had pretty much given up on school and going to college when I, in 8th grade or something. For some reason, I thought I was going to go to Embry-Riddle and go the secret intelligence route and some other stuff like that, or maybe becoming an attorney at Gonzaga. Like, you have all these dreams when you're that young, but when it comes to actually pursuing them and seeing the discipline it takes to make them happen, and usually you find out in a hurry that most kids at that age don't have the maturity to put something off long enough in order to actually achieve it. They don't know how to put off most of the instant gratification, like we talked in Jonah Prill's podcast. They'd rather go and have that instant dopamine rush. And you get that from girls, parties, and fast cars. So, or just any car in general, any piece of crap that you can find and race it down a quarter strip, country road somewhere. So many good stories. I got to bring some friends on and out ourselves. I think it's been 7 years, so we're probably past the statute of limitations, but so shooting was a fun thing for me. And I quit that because it started to cost a lot of money. My dad eventually quit working overseas there and just got into more ag work. I just started to make a little money after Take Initiative. I just kind of got into ag and started doing more of that in the summer times. And the last senior year of high school, I had 2 positions offered to me. One that was very kind from some pilot friends of ours, and another one that was very kind from a gentleman that had a pipeline manufacturing company. And I took the pipeline work. It looked like it was going to make more money. And so at 18 years old, I was pretty much doing a job that I have to do the math here really quick, but it was a good paying job. 2014, the Bakken was starting to wind down a little bit. And oh man, I got to do some math here. And then there's Davis Bacon wages and everything. But I mean, I was doing a thing that was probably going to be making 60, 70 grand a year working in the oil fields, and then potentially more depending on government contracts and stuff like that. And I was a fusion technician, and this was my first real job, I have to admit. Again, I said earlier that I talk myself into things, which is a wonderful thing to do, but when you actually have to perform on the things that you say that you're capable of, I typically would get into more situations that I couldn't perform in because I'd never tested myself in a long time period. You know, I never held down. At that point, everything was seasonal. Sure, you'd work on farm. You know, I do farm work and stuff in the summertime and do that, you know, do different things in the summertime, but you only work for a month or two. And a lot of that work is, you know, you'll work maybe a 16-hour day that day and then 5-hour day the next day, and just stuff that was a lot less structured. So this was my first real structured job. And I might have said that I had more experience than I thought I had. And then you get into the oil fields and it's a whole nother thing. But I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the structure. I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I'm grateful that it taught me a lot about myself. I was actually a really good kid, but I was terrible at keeping my time. And then I was terrible at, I was really worried and really cared about my job and my position, but I was terrible at making myself go to bed on time. When you're working alone in places like the oil fields where it's dark, it's dreary, you're surrounded by not very good things, even living in man camps, you start to just kind of dive in on yourself. And I'm a pretty social human being, so when I was working alone, it was tough and dark and cold. It just got dark and cold. And at this point in time, I'm going to be extremely transparent on this podcast. So that's something that I want you guys to try to take into account. But most teenage boys are typically exposed to pornography at a pretty young age. And believe it or not, pornography is a pretty big thing. But I had a pornography problem, and I had, really that was about it. It was just like a pornography problem. I didn't really drink. I didn't drink at all at that time because I was just so scared about doing a good job. But I had a video game problem too. And like I would just to escape what I was doing all day, as soon as I got off work, I just go play video games in my room. And at that point I was like, okay, this is bad. I got to figure out how to feed myself. So I really started diving into biblical stuff. I started getting in touch with some buddies of mine like Caleb, and we started doing some stuff over the phone and just trying to follow up. I did some Conquer series, some church given things to try to work through my pornography issue and things like that. And this is something that, believe it or not, that is a rampant thing, especially in oil fields, but it's just a rampant thing among a lot of people. Now, I would never use company stuff or anything like that, but just because everyone has a phone, you can just do whatever you want on your phone, and that's an instant gratification thing that will absolutely destroy your life. So working through that and not knowing how to have discipline in my time and discipline in what I'm putting together, and actually willing myself to get good enough sleep to be able to go out and work the next day. I was late pretty often to my work. And this time in my life, it took a huge toll on me. The imposter syndrome was real. I was not capable of an extremely simple task, or what other people had deemed was extremely simple, and were just absolutely incredulous that I wasn't able to complete it if I was such a smart kid. And I just didn't find a whole lot of joy in it. I love working with other people, but when I had to work alone, it killed me. It killed me. So, and then on top of that, it's a terrible feedback loop. Once I did a bad job, I would beat myself up for the next 2 weeks about that bad job so much that I wouldn't be able to restart myself. I wouldn't be able to do it again. So actually at the end of that, right before I quit, I had a couple pink slips because wasn't logging my time right. And I'd get confused or I'd write it up wrong. And honestly, I was so deep sleep deprived because I was just playing video games, or I was doing anything to try to numb the pain of where I was at and what I was doing. I just would forget to log my time. I'd forget to, whatever. So I had a couple close scares. I fell asleep while driving one night, and I was just in bad shape. So I came home from that. I had to quit. I had to admit that I was not capable, and it was a mutual firing for sure. And it's a good thing too. And every man I've worked for in one way or another that I've looked up to, I've had this issue of putting them in a fatherly position. And I just feel so terrible when I quit working for them if I didn't do a good enough job. So that was all part of it. I came home. I ended up having a full-on panic attack the night I got home. I woke up in my own puke on the shop floor, passed out. I'd been drinking Red Bulls to stay awake to get home, and it just my heart hurt. I thought I was having a heart attack. I went numb on the right side. I called a buddy of mine. I sent him my location, and the next thing I know, I woke up on the shop floor, and he hauled me back to his place, and I stayed at my buddy's place for a couple days, just shivering. And it was over the weekend, I think. I can't remember. And then I pretty much had to go in. I might have worked for another week, and then I had to quit. So that was a tough time in my life because coming out of high school, that's the first thing a guy does is go and take a job on like that, thinking that he's being responsible. And he's going to, if he's not going to go to school, he's going to figure out how to make enough money to pay back his parents for the stupid startup he did. And so I came back from that, and I thought, okay, this isn't going to work. I need to go back. Let's try this startup thing. Let's do this again. So I started a website development company. I had some money saved over from the oil company, or from the pipeline company. And I decided, all right, let's do this. So I found a couple of developers left over from when I first tried that tech company in high school. And I asked them to come back, and can we just go and build websites for people? And the first client I had was this pipeline company. They were like, you know what? They liked me enough. Doesn't make any sense to go and build a website for them. Gave me a sizable amount of money down. And one day, if I ever get flush, I'd love to pay you back. We weren't able to get it done. I don't know if it was miscommunication or what, but we weren't able to get it done, and I've always felt bad about it. And, this is me coming clean. But we tried to get businesses to build websites for, and I clearly didn't understand the process of building a website. I mean, Wix was just starting to become a thing, and WordPress is already a thing. That was how we were doing most of our stuff, Bootstrap and everything. But I was not very good at finding actual clients because I thought I was good at sales, but sales and talking and converting are two very different things. In order to convert somebody into an actual sale, you have to have a full process, an inducting process. And typically in our market, it was more of an education thing than anything else. A lot of businesses, even in 2015, they couldn't comprehend having a website for a hobby store or something, and Shopify or anything like that. So I stepped away from that, paid off my people. I kept the office for a long time. I had an office rented and everything. I was even sleeping in that dang thing for a while, and just trying to find some kind of independence for my parents. Because for the most part, whenever I was home, I'd just always stay at my parents' house. Then I ran into a nice gentleman that took me under his wing to go play cowboy. And when I say cowboy, we don't need more cowboys in this world. We need more cattlemen. That's a quote that I think I remember him telling me. But he let me work on his ranch for a while. I'd love to have him on this podcast. Phenomenal guy. And I learned a lot. I learned about calving. I learned actual animal husbandry up there, and it was only a couple months at a time. I worked for him, and then the longest stint I worked for him was about 4 or 5 months, I think, because I worked for him off and on over the next couple of years. I worked in a custom harvesting company, and with my buddy Caleb, he started a company when he was 26, and eventually that went bankrupt. Learned a ton there. That's probably for another time too, but I ran machinery and combines and all of that stuff for him. We put together a crew. We cut all the way from Oklahoma to Texas a couple different times, or Oklahoma to Texas all the way to Canada, and he came from a combining company or combining family, farming family, and we were putting together deals and getting that done. And that worked perfectly because then I was working on the ranch and doing, feeding and stuff in the wintertime. And then I was combining and then feeding. And then I bought a semi truck in 2017. And I actually threw in. I rented a trailer by myself. I drove this semi truck. Now let's see here. This is not 7 years ago. So I probably shouldn't bring that up. But I drove this semi truck without the correct paperwork across all of those states down to Oklahoma. Finally got pulled over down there, and they looked at me and they had no idea what to think. I did not have any of the correct paperwork, and this truck was 40 years old at that point. And the owner that I bought it from, bless his soul, man, he couldn't believe I drove it all the way down to Texas. It was crazy. I just went for it. There was at that time, for some reason, I was scared, but I just did some things. I just went for them. And my dad loved that stuff. He loved that I was working in machinery, cowboy. That was stuff he understood. The tech stuff was hard for him to comprehend in some ways. And so it was really fun doing all of that and telling him stories and talking about it. And he flew down and checked it out, and he got along really well with Caleb and Caleb's dad. And it was just a phenomenal time. A lot of fighting. We get mad at each other in the crews and get mad about not getting paid or not getting the right jobs or not doing it right on the job. It was a great time, but I learned how to operate a lot of machinery. And yeah, I should have learned all of that probably if I went over the oil fields. I would have been done better over there. But I learned a lot. I mean, I rebuilt a whole combine after I wrecked it. I did a ton of different stuff. It was crazy. I started to learn how to work on motors. I bought my first pickup, rolled off a hill, it committed suicide, and then I tore that thing apart, bought another project pickup. Just so much was learned. My buddy Caleb went bankrupt. He'll have to get on here and tell his story sometime. And I bought a truck from the bank that was his. And when they did his auction and everything or whatever, and I bought that. I got into kind of long hauling cattle and hauling a lot of hay. I just stuck with hauling hay, buying and selling hay, and met up with a good friend of mine from Western Montana. We started buying and selling hay like crazy in the winter of 17 and 18. And we just hauled hay like crazy. And that's when I started my videography company too. I was starting to make enough money, a lot more money. I'd been seeing a lot of money since I started the combine, or I was combining and stuff. And then working on the ranch and understanding how big money was always rolling through. And even when I was in the web design stuff, after I saved my money from the oil fields and I was trying to make my money back from web design, never paid my parents back for the startup, but I kept thinking I was going to reinvest myself until I made enough money to pay them back. But I had always seen a lot of money and seen a lot of money come in a short amount of time. One job could be a couple $100,000 in different situations. And then, you move to a cattle ranch and you get one paycheck at the end of the year, and it's a lot of money. And so I just kind of always saw that, and that was something that I preferred as opposed to a 9 to 5 hourly. You get your check every 2 weeks, because I felt like there's no motivation in that, and there was no hourly pay. Just never sat well with me. I was way more interested in commission so that I wasn't limited in what I could earn. And so the trucking thing worked well for a while. I was learning fast and hard about insurance, keeping logs, and all of that stuff. There's a lot of a lot of regulation in the trucking and logistics industry, and it's a very difficult industry to make it. The margins are extremely slim. You're dictated by the government and where the gas prices are, and then you're also dictated by or managed by the whatever the current regulation is for different bridge laws and things like that. And fees and fines can be absolutely outrageous. So all of that in consideration, I got out of trucking, and that's where I got into the videography company. In episode 2 or 3, I think I told somebody that I told the podcast that I had done a videography in 16 and 17. That's not true. I got my first drone in 17. My first camera, I think, in the winter of 17 as well. And I was doing that while I was trucking there for a while. I had the drone first, and then I had the drone first, and I bought my GH5 in in 18, probably late 18. And I got married in 18 to my wonderful wife, Olivia. I met her in high school. She has an outrageous story, and it'd be a lot of fun to have her on as well at some point. We need to talk about that. She's my rock. She's a little bit behind the scenes in some ways, but she's definitely, we've grown a lot together. I was a horrible human being, I think, when we got married. So when we first got married, I had bought that red semi truck that year, my Peterbilt. And I took that thing and got it all set up, and Caleb helped me get it set up so I can go trucking and go haul cattle. And I left for 4 or 5 months the first year that Liv and I got married, and I did not come home. I drove probably 100,000 miles. I think it was 80,000 miles, and I didn't sleep. And I drove like crazy. I mean, I slept, but I mean, I put in a lot of hours, a lot of time, and had a phenomenal year and thought I was doing really well. On the very last load, 2 days before Christmas, I lost a calf, and that crushed me. I am a sensitive person. Because before that, I had gone so far as bungee strapping calves to the side of the trailer so they wouldn't get trampled. And I would, I had a thing in my truck, a nipple on a bottle for Gatorade, so I could give them electrolytes to keep these animals alive. I didn't want to pay for them if they died, which was the standard deal. And then I didn't want to, just don't want to have them die on me. I lost calves when I was working for that ranch when I first got started learning about cattle and stuff, and I lost them because of my own negligence in some cases. I tubed one wrong one time, and that crushed me. I cared a lot about my work. I care a lot about doing a good job, and I care a lot about doing it for the people that care about me. So I'll care even more about doing it a good job. And sometimes my brain just stops working and I do stupid things, but I do care, believe it or not. So that's my life. That's kind of going all the way up. This has been a long podcast. This is an hour long. And I got into real estate also I got my real estate license in 17 as well. And I started doing real estate part-time all the way through those last 4 or 5 years. And I was thinking, because I was meeting so many farmers and ranchers while I was hauling hay, that that I would eventually maybe find a farm or ranch that would be willing to sell through me, because I saw the commissions and everything that looked pretty good. You know, I'm not allowed to legally say what commissions are, I don't believe, but they looked good. They were pretty good. So they can range anywhere between, I can say this, they can range anywhere between, whatever, between 1% and 7%, 3 to 5%, it could be whatever. So on different transactions. And that seemed like a reasonable way to go, because I knew that I wasn't ever going to make enough money to go and buy a ranch myself one day, or live a independent lifestyle at $15 an hour. Now you can get a 401k and just, compound interest and build it up over time. But I wanted something faster. I wanted something more. I always did. Always dreamed of bigger and better things. And so doing real estate, I got a start at a great company, training not a training company, but a wonderful company here in town. I originally tried to go to Miles City, and I kind of got turned down because I had no experience. So I came back to Billings, and I did all my stuff here, and I got brought on by a wonderful group of people that took a chance on a 20-year-old kid. That was crazy too. It was being 20 years old and trying to do farm and ranch, where, hate to say it, but it's mostly gray hairs in that industry. So, I attempted that. I never made a sale more than 1 or 2 sales for just friends and family for the first couple of years. And I really felt like an imposter. That's why I started videography. I thought, okay, I'm going to start doing video walkthroughs, going to start marketing this. I'm going to try to maybe sell videos to other people and figure out how to make this video stuff work. And that's what I did. So I started doing that, and I actually started making enough money. It was decent money. I had a wonderful client that let me do a lot of videos in Red Lodge. And I enjoyed it when my little brother was doing it with me, because we were able to actually get things done. But when my little brother started and I started to work together, we found out we're not the best at working together. And I'm going to have him on the podcast too. But it was a struggle learning how to manage a company again for the 4th time in a row, it seemed like, and make sure he was getting paid, and which we were good. He never not got paid. I don't think. He can tell you later. And but then getting things done on time was the hardest thing for us. We were perfectionists. We kept wanting to do better. And then sometimes when you only get to shoot one thing one time, you don't know what it looks like until you get back. Like, you can look on the little screen and try to figure it out, or you can whip open a laptop, but you just don't have the time to go through all of the footage. We'd take 3 or 4 hours to try to shoot a property. And so we'd be really upset about certain situations where we did not know our equipment well enough to get it right the first time. We'd drive an hour out there, drive an hour back, or hour and a half sometimes. But that's the way it is. That's what it's like growing a company, is another time figuring out what I would like to do and what I didn't like to do. And, but it gave me a lot of invaluable experience with videography, sound equipment. And, I got my drone license. I went through that whole process, worked through all of that. And it was a good little piece of income. And I thought for a second there, I was starting to watch a lot of YouTube. And I started to learn a ton of stuff. I started to dip into a pretty serious depression in 17 from driving truck. 17, 18, 19. It was tough. Driving truck all the time just kind of killed me. It stressed me out, and you're always worried about trucks tipping over, trucks breaking down. Rebuilding the motor is $30,000. So I was looking for a way to get out, and that was real estate and videography. My little brother and I broke up on that videography deal. He decided to go try some stuff in Bozeman because we weren't finding enough work, and I was kind of losing heart in it. And I was going back to trucking to try to make enough money to stay alive and keep things rolling. And it was, at that time, people still were asking me to do video stuff. And what really kind of shut it all down was in 2020, my dad passed away in a plane crash. And he was a huge part of my life. The trucking was something that I did with him a lot. Whenever I didn't feel like trucking, I could call him and ask him to come and help out. And it was something that he really enjoyed. He really enjoyed being around that machinery and everything. And he would keep if I left my trucks parked at his house, he'd clean them and take care of them and do a bunch of work on them. I was so spoiled. I mean, not a bunch of work. The bigger projects we would do together. I tipped over one of my trucks, and I had to rebuild the dang thing and do a bunch of stuff to it. And my dad helped a bunch with that. And so losing my dad was huge. And I was depressed before, manic depressive, and going through my ups and downs. But then after that, I just lost it. I shut down, and some people came out of the woodwork and got me working again. I couldn't get in my semi truck because I was in the process of selling one the day before he died. We went and got some pictures with the white one I was selling. And then he had cleaned up the white one and he cleaned up the red one. And I just couldn't get in my truck for a long time. And a good friend of mine that I had worked for in high school and middle school more than anything. Called me up with some jobs and let me go and do some jobs, and got me going again. And a good buddy of mine, Josh Broadbent, who's also in the trucking construction company, he gave me work too, and we, kept some things rolling and learned about each other through that, and just managing companies and managing friendships and everything. It was just, I got pulled back out of my depression for a little while and made enough money to survive and feel like I was getting somewhere there end of 2020. And then it was a bad year. 2020 was bad. COVID, I mean, yeah, that was bad. But my really good friend who combined with me and I met through a mutual girlfriend in high school, Josh, his dad passed away in January 2020. And same year that, literally 4 months later, my dad died. And that was the same time Kobe died, which doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I wasn't a huge basketball guy, but there's something eerie about things going down in that first month of 2020. Just a lot of things going down. And I just remember talking to my dad about it and just saying, man, be careful in what you're doing and where he was at, what he was working on. And it was a tough time. And we were butting heads. I didn't really want him to be doing what he was doing at that time, but he was doing it to make a living. And I wasn't making enough money to keep him busy in the trucks all the time. So, I got back to trucking again, and I trucked that whole summer, that whole year. And a couple years before that, I had ran into a good friend of mine from high school, Zach Goggins, and Zach had asked me about real estate and had asked me about, what to do to kind of get started. And I told him a long time ago, in 18, I think I told him, I said, it was right around the time we got married. I said, man, somebody in this town needs to do video for real estate. So I'm going to go ahead and claim it. I'm going to say Zach didn't do video until I told him I did to do video. Because everybody that's in the local Billings community knows Zach Goggins' hilarious real estate videos. And I got super jealous. I was so mad. Zach, everything he touched, man, he's so successful at. And he can do it in his own weird, quirky way. A little quirkster. And Zach hit me up in 2020 after my dad had passed. He'd actually come out and helped out with the memorial and everything and doing that. And he said, man, we need to pair up in real estate. We need to get together. We need to do this. My wife had been telling me this for years, to do real estate full time and get the hell away from trucking and chase it. And I just couldn't keep myself disciplined enough to stick with it. It's way easier to get in a truck, get paid at the end of the trip. Get in a truck, get paid at the end of the trip, or buy hay in one state, haul it somewhere else, get paid when you get there. Real estate takes 2 or 3 months for you ever see a commissions check, if you see a commissions check, and typically you got to have 10 deals go on for the 2 that actually go through. Zach had a pipeline already built together, and so he got in touch with me, and he said, man, there's nobody else I'd rather do it with. And that was like a thing from heaven, because at that time I felt like people only did things with me out of pity, or they did things with me because I was making them money in one way or another. And I was not making Zach money by him bringing me on. I'd just be taking on more of the back end paperwork. And I was an imposter in a lot of things. The only thing I felt like at that point I had ever done successfully was maybe my trucking company. And that was only 3 or 4 months out of the year. Every year. So it was 5 months out of the year. So I didn't really feel very good about a lot of the stuff I'd been working on. But and you can see, you look at my physical demeanor. I just started gaining weight like crazy in 18, 19. Liv also is a good cook. I started losing hair. I started just going downhill, and things just got darker and darker and darker. And then, but anyway, Zach came along, and yeah, so it was good. That was really good to meet up with him. And in February, I think we kicked it all off. We put it together, started working on deals together, and he had the deals coming in. We just had to brainstorm media. I had to get showings done, and he had to kind of retrain me in a bit, because I did not do enough transactions prior in order to know exactly what I was doing. And I was very scared about asking questions because I felt like I was just imposter syndrome was ridiculously strong when I was at that other real estate company for a while. So that's where we are. That brings us up to this year. I've had a phenomenal year in real estate. Did a ton of transactions, probably about 50, 60 deals. And then I think I didn't close more than 20 of them, but it was a phenomenal year. I've never been that successful. It let me know that I can do real estate full time, and that's where I'm at right now. And wrapping all of this up, because we are 1:10, but I'll never have to do this podcast again. Well, I mean, everyone's up to date and they're kept track of, and they kind of, brought in on this. I lost a lot of family members this last year, and that's part of why I started this podcast. Because I feel like who else is going to tell their story? Who else is going to tell anybody's story if I don't do it myself? And I like telling stories. So the day before I posted Jonah Prill's podcast, 004, it was, I want to say Monday night I recorded that. Tuesday was the day I was working on getting it done, getting it edited and everything. And I didn't post it until Wednesday night or Thursday, but another family member passed away. I've lost about 7 family members in the last year since my dad died. My uncle died this last spring. I lost a great aunt and uncle. And then I lost just this last couple weeks another great aunt and uncle, all people on my dad's family. And then a lot of family friends passed away. Only a couple from COVID, but it's just a really rough couple years. Wonderful, amazing people. My Aunt Linda Gullickson, she passed away Monday, and she had taken care of my Alan Gullickson. This is my dad's uncle to his mom and dad. His mom and dad, like I said, died in a plane crash. So his uncle was a big part of his life growing up. And his parents didn't die until they were in a plane crash until he was about 25 or 26, maybe 27. And he died when I was 24. And so it's kind of a weird thing there. But these people were people that he looked up to extremely well, and they taught him a lot of things in life. And Uncas, Alan Gullickson had lived through, I think, prostate cancer and a bunch of other stuff. And Linda had taken care of him for years as he was trying to get through that. Chewed right up to the very end. And I got even footage of taking him in his last semi-truck ride. When I went over there with a load of hay, Dad and I loaded him up, and we went for a drive. And I got pictures of Aunt Linda showing my dad how to pan for gold, because she was a pioneering woman. She'd cook meals on Dutch ovens and make jellies and jams and had chickens and lived on a little river in Idaho. And it's just amazing people. But there's been a lot of death, a lot of loss, and it's been an extremely tough last couple of years. And I regret not staying in touch with a lot of that family, and maybe this way, some regards, I'm making up for it by making this podcast. But and there's been a lot of close calls, a lot of good friends of mine. Luke Anderson, I can't wait to get him on this podcast. Suffering with cancer. We were roommates for quite a while, and because of my depression, I just haven't been able to reach out to people and stay in touch with people that are in way more hurt than I am. But whenever I see them, I light up. I get really excited about being around people when I'm around them and in person. But when I'm stuck in my head in this house, I don't do as much. And I used to be a very outdoors person. Hunting, fishing, backpacking, working. Very, very strong in those things. So, but I've just kind of lost in the last couple of years. I'm hoping to get back to it. But it was hard to put that podcast out, even though I had such a wonderful day working on that with Jonah. And I realized that I cannot let, as much as I love that woman to death, she is just an amazing woman. I wish I would have reached out to her more. But I had to get a story out. And that's the only way I'm going to pull myself out of this and be of any help to anybody else and let them know, reach out just to say hello and hit click. Just reach out and tell somebody that you love them and what they mean to you. Never be afraid of it. And then that's it. That's all you have to say. So, Merry Christmas, you guys. You're going to have a wonderful year this year, even if you're spending alone. A couple fun videos I've been watching. Look up Alex Ernst, Daily Christmas Vlog. It's trivial, but he does 24 days of Christmas. He's part of the vlog squad, and he's a lot of fun to watch. They're like 2-minute videos. And if you're spending Christmas alone, just watch that. It's pretty funny. Go pop in Elf. Go sit with some family members. If you don't have any family members, go find some friends. Friends are better than some family in some cases because you get to pick them. Just kidding. Family is great. I'm going to go listen to some Spanish tonight. Hang out with my family. And I love all you guys. Thank you so much for the support. Don't worry, I won't do another hour and 10-minute podcast on myself again. Now you know who I am, and we'll just keep you updated going forward. But you kind of understand where I come from and what I've done and what I'm thinking a little bit. And I get excited about bringing on all my friends and family on this thing and letting you know them, and anyone else that wants to come on. What the hell? If I can make a podcast today, I'll do it. Because this is crazy, but I don't know why I can't hit 1 million subscribers in a year on this thing and make it full time. My interview skills are decent enough. And if I just find more people I can clout chase like Jonah, I'll make it happen. So I'll get paid for this thing. All right. Thanks for listening. You guys have a wonderful Christmas. And I need to work on shortening up the endings. I just can't stop talking. I can't stop. Hopefully you can't stop listening. Hopefully you're addicted. It's like crack cocaine. We're going to have a lot of great chats about everything going forward. We're going to have so many different good chats, getting honest about stuff, getting transparent with stuff. Because we all have our own issues and our own addictions and the own, things that keep us from getting what we really want to do. And a lot of it's just in our own head. So, the dopamine's already there. You just got to figure out how to release it in a healthy way so that you don't make those synapses connect with the wrong stuff. That's all it is. That's just, we're breaking it down. We're rewiring our brains, and we're going to keep on putting this out there to get other people through, bring on people that are going to bring you guys some hope and some optimism and let you know that there's a lot possible. We'll talk about everything it takes to be successful in this life. And then one day maybe we'll talk about what it takes to be successful in the next, or that's what I believe anyways. So it's a wonderful comfort. It is Christmas. And it's a wonderful comfort to know a lot of my family members believed. And he is the reason for the season. So I won't rub that in anybody's face. I love everybody. But I do have to bring it back to that because that's the only way I've been saved. And if I've been saved, I think I've been saved. I've been working on it. So, yeah. Merry Christmas. God bless you guys. Praying for you. Keep praying for me. Lord knows I need it. And have a good night. We'll talk to you later.